They say silence is golden, but in this house, silence is a death sentence. I didn't choose Ho-jin's mansion because it was beautiful. I chose it because it didn't exist on any map. I am Nia, and 3 hours ago, I was the most powerful strategist in the city. Now, I'm just a bloodstain on a $5,000 sofa. I watched him, Ho-jin. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't scream. He just looked at me with the eyes of a man who calculates the cost of a human life before he even says hello. He's the Mafia's ghost, the man who makes problems disappear. And right now, I am the biggest problem he has ever faced. He has 2 choices. He can finish what my ex started, or he can realize that I'm the only thing standing between him and a total empire collapse. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about mercy. It was about the deadliest game of leverage ever played. Hello, family. Sit tight and do not skip yet, because this isn't a story to skip. Where in the world are you watching from? Kindly drop it in the comments so I can send special regards to you. And most importantly, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel. Now let's dive into the depth of the story. The silence in the room was so thick Nia could hear the steady thrum of the central air conditioning and the heavy, rhythmic thud of her own heart. She pressed her back against the cool fabric of the sofa, her fingers trembling as they gripped the upholstery. She could feel the stinging heat of the gash on her cheek, a parting gift from the man she had once called her life. Ho-jin didn't move. He stood in the center of the room, a glass of amber liquid sitting forgotten on the coffee table. He was dressed in a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up with clinical precision. To anyone else, he looked like a wealthy executive enjoying a quiet evening. To Nia, he looked like a predator evaluating a threat. "You're bleeding on the weave," Ho-jin said. His voice was low, devoid of the shock she expected. "That fabric is hand-spun. It's harder to clean than a crime scene." Nia forced herself to look him in the eye. "Then it's lucky you're a professional cleaner, Ho-jin. I assume the rumors about your discretion weren't exaggerated." Ho-jin took a step forward, his black slides making no sound on the polished floor. He stopped exactly 6 feet away, respecting a perimeter she hadn't even realized she'd set. "You know my name," he noted, his eyes scanning her, nodding the hoodie, the defensive posture, the way she favored her left side. "Which means you didn't break in here by accident. You're Nia, the woman who walked away with the Seoul Syndicate's ledger." "I didn't walk away with it," Nia hissed, her voice cracking. "I am the ledger. I memorized the offshore routing numbers before I burned the hard drives. If I die, $30 billion stays locked in the ether forever. If you turn me over to them, you get a thank you and a bullet for knowing too much. If you keep me here." "If I keep you here," Ho-jin interrupted, "I'm committing treason against the families I've served for a decade." He looked around his perfect, sterile home. "I like my peace, Nia. You are the embodiment of noise." He didn't call the guards. Instead, he walked to a sleek console on the wall and tapped a sequence. The heavy, floor-to-ceiling windows were suddenly obscured by reinforced steel shutters that slid into place with a hydraulic hiss. The mansion was now a tomb. "You have 48 hours, Ho-jin said, turning back to her. He walked to a cabinet and pulled out a first aid kit that looked more like a surgical suite. "In that time, you will transfer the first 10% of those funds into a neutral escrow. That is the price of my noise cancellation services." He knelt beside her, not with the warmth of a healer, but with the efficiency of a mechanic. As he reached out to clean the wound on her face, Nia flinched. His hand stopped in midair. "In this house," he whispered, his dark eyes locking onto hers, "the only person you have to fear is the version of yourself that decides to lie to me. Do we have an understanding?" Nia looked at the man the underworld feared, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a different kind of shiver. "We have a deal." The antiseptic stung Nia's cheek, but she didn't pull away this time. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. Ho-jin's movements were rhythmic, almost hypnotic. He wasn't just cleaning a wound, he was studying her. In the underworld, information was the only currency that didn't devalue, and right now, Nia was a gold mine. "Why this house?" Ho-jin asked, his voice a low vibration in the sterile room. He didn't look up from his work. There are 3 safe houses within a 5-mile radius of the waterfront. You chose the one place that isn't on the books. Nia leaned her head back against the sofa, closing her eyes. Because the safe houses belong to the syndicate, and the syndicate belongs to him. She didn't need to say her ex's name. In their world, the man who had hunted her was a ghost story told to frighten disobedient soldiers. He knows every brick and every basement in Seoul, but he's afraid of you, Ho-jin. Or rather, he's afraid of what you represent. You're the only man who knows where the bodies are buried, literally and financially. Ho-jin paused, his fingers hovering near her temple. Fear is a poor motivator for a man like him. It's usually replaced by a need for control. He stood up, packing the medical supplies with a click. You think staying here makes you a guest. It doesn't. It makes you a liability. If they track your biometric signature to this coordinate, my life's work, this invisibility I've built, evaporates in a single tactical strike. I disabled my trackers, Nia said, her voice gaining a sharp edge of pride. I burned the RFID chips out of my skin in a public restroom 3 towns back. I'm off the grid. Ho-jin tilted his head, a ghost of a smirk touching his lips, the first sign of emotion she had seen. You burned the chips, efficient, but you forgot the satellite mesh. The syndicate uses AI-driven gait analysis. The way you walk, the way you favor your left hip. It's as unique as a fingerprint. They didn't need a chip to find you. They just needed a camera. He walked over to a sleek, obsidian-black terminal and tapped the glass. A holographic map of the surrounding district bloomed into life. Red dots pulsed along the perimeter. They're not here yet, Ho-jin said, his tone turning cold. But they are narrowing the search. You have 36 hours before the algorithm pins this house as the only statistical anomaly in the sector. If you want to survive, you need to stop being a fugitive and start being a ghost. And ghosts don't have feelings, Nia. They don't have pasts. Do you have it in you to disappear? Nia looked at the red dots. Then at the man standing in the center of his high-tech fortress. The power dynamic was shifting. He wasn't just her host, he was her only hope of becoming invisible. Tell me what to do, she whispered. The basement of Ho-jin's mansion didn't look like a basement. It was a cold, subterranean laboratory of servers and cooling fans, glowing with a soft blue light. This was the heart of his operation, the place where the Mafia's cleaner laundered billions in untraceable crypto assets. Nia sat at a workstation, her fingers flying across a haptic keyboard. The wound on her face had begun to itch, a sign of healing, but her mind was focused on the code. Ho-jin stood behind her, watching the lines of data stream past. The encryption is layered, Nia explained, her voice echoing in the metallic space. It's not just a password, it's a multi-sig trigger. One part is the sequence I memorized. The second part is a physical key, my ex. He didn't realize that when I destroyed the drives, I didn't just delete the data. I integrated the final decryption algorithm into a recursive loop. Without me, the money is a digital paperweight. Ho-jin leaned in, his shoulder nearly brushing hers. The scent of sandalwood and expensive ink drifted from him. And the third part, there's always a third part in a high-level vault. Nia hesitated. She turned her chair to face him. The third part is a biometric override, not a thumbprint, not a retinal scan. It's a frequency, a heartbeat. Ho-jin's eyes narrowed. A pulse echo, that's military grade. It's more than that, Nia said. It's tuned to my resting heart rate. If my heart stops, or if it goes above 140 beats per minute, like it would in a state of extreme terror or during an interrogation, the entire ledger self-destructs. Permanently. Ho-jin let out a slow, sharp breath. He finally understood why she was still alive. Her ex couldn't just kill her, and he couldn't torture her, because the moment her body went into shock, the prize would vanish. She was a living, breathing insurance policy. So, Ho-jin mused, you are a walking bomb. If I let you get too stressed, I lose my payment. If I let you die, I lose my leverage. He reached out, his hand wrapping gently but firmly around her wrist. He felt the steady, thumping rhythm of her pulse against his thumb. You're at 85, he noted. Calm, disciplined, I like that. The proximity was electric. In this underworld of violence and betrayal, this small, quiet moment of connection felt more dangerous than a gun to the head. Nia didn't pull her hand away. For the first time, she saw Ho-jin not as a cold machine, but as a man who was just as trapped in his own golden cage as she was. "I need you to teach me how to mask the frequency," Nia said, her voice barely a whisper. "If they find us, I need to be able to stay calm enough to keep the ledger alive, even if he's standing right in front of me." Ho-jin let go of her wrist, but his gaze remained fixed on hers. "That's not something you learn in a day, Nia. That requires total control over your own soul. But," he paused, heading toward a door at the back of the lab, "I have a sensory deprivation tank upstairs. We start tonight." The peace of the mansion was shattered at 3:00 a.m. by a sound that shouldn't have been there, the high-pitched whine of a drone. Ho-jin was in Nia's room before she was even fully awake. He didn't say a word, just pressed a hand over her mouth and pulled her into the shadows of the closet. He was warm, his body a solid weight against hers, and for a second, Nia's heart rate spiked. She felt the digital warning on her wrist monitor vibrate, 110, 120. "Breathe," Ho-jin hissed into her ear. "Control the rhythm. Think of nothing but the air entering your lungs." She focused on his scent, on the steady rise and fall of his chest against her back. Slowly, the numbers on her monitor began to drop. 190/82. Outside, the drone hovered near the reinforced glass of the bedroom window. A red laser light swept across the room, searching for thermal signatures. Thanks to the ghost protocol Ho-jin had initiated earlier, the room appeared empty to the drone's sensors, a perfect room temperature void. After an eternity, the whine faded as the drone moved on. Ho-jin didn't let go immediately. He stayed there, holding her in the dark, his breath ghosting over the back of her neck. "He's impatient," Ho-jin whispered. "That drone wasn't Syndicate, it was a private model. Your ex is acting outside the family's orders. He's getting desperate." "He's not just desperate," Nia said, turning in his arms so they were chest to chest in the cramped space. "He's obsessed. He thinks I'm a part of his collection, a piece of the empire that he lost." "Then he's already lost," Ho-jin replied. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable in the dark. "Because the one thing he doesn't understand about people like us is that we aren't pieces of an empire. We are the architects of our own exit." Ho-jin pulled back, the professional mask sliding back into place. "He'll be here in person by dawn. The drone was a scout. He knows the general area now. We don't have 36 hours anymore. We have 3. "What's the plan?" Nia asked, her voice steady. "We stop hiding," Ho-jin said, a dangerous light in his eyes. "We invite him in, but we don't play by his rules. We play by mine. I'm going to show him what happens when you try to clean a man who invented the detergent." He handed her a small, black device. "This is a signal jammer. When he enters the foyer, I want you to trigger it. It will cut his communication to his team. He'll think he has you cornered. But in reality, he'll be stepping into a vacuum." Nia gripped the device, and then, Ho-jin said, "you're going to show him exactly how much it costs to break my sofa." The air in the subterranean server room was freezing, a necessity to keep the massive processors from melting under the load Nia was about to put on them. Ho-jin stood at the primary console, his fingers moving with a grace that bordered on the artistic. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about an architectural demolition of a criminal empire. "If we do this," Nia said, her voice echoing off the metallic walls, "there is no going back. The moment I execute the black hole script, the Syndicate's liquidity vanishes. Not just the stolen funds, but their operational capital, their payroll, their laundered assets in the Cayman Islands. You'll be the man who bankrupts the most dangerous men in Asia." Ho-jin didn't flinch. "I've spent 12 years building their monuments. I know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. In finance, as in architecture, if you remove the right pillar, the whole roof comes down. The question isn't whether I'm ready, Nia. The question is whether you can handle the weight of the silence that follows." Nia stepped up to her terminal. The black hole's script was a masterwork of digital malice. It didn't just steal money, it spoofed the blockchain into thinking the transactions were authorized by the X himself. By the time the dust settled, the syndicate wouldn't just be broke. They would think their own leader had robbed them. It was the ultimate betrayal, authored by the woman he had tried to break. Starting phase 1, Nia whispered. On the screens, thousands of lines of green code began to cascade like a digital waterfall. At the top of the screen, a counter showed the syndicate's net worth. It began to plummet. 10 million, 50 million, 200 million. They're trying to counterping, Ho-Jin noted, his eyes tracking a red warning light on his periphery. The X's personal hackers are trying to trace the origin. They're hitting the firewall I built in Singapore. It'll hold for 10 minutes. Give me the encryption key, Nia. Nia reached into her memory, pulling out the complex alphanumeric string she had guarded with her life. As she typed it in, she felt a strange sense of mourning. This code was the last link to her old life, the last thing that made her valuable to the monsters she had escaped. By releasing it, she was becoming a nobody again. Key accepted. The computer chimed in a synthetic, female voice. Phase 2 initiated, Ho-Jin said. I'm redirecting the flow into a series of non-custodial wallets. From there, it gets chopped into microtransactions and scattered across 10,000 different accounts. It's like throwing a bag of diamonds into a hurricane. No one will ever be able to piece it back together. As the counter hit 0, a heavy silence fell over the room. The syndicate was financially dead. Nia leaned back, her chest heaving. Her heart rate monitor stayed at a steady 78. She had done it. She had remained calm in the eye of the storm. He's here, Ho-Jin said, his voice dropping an octave. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at the security feed. A black SUV had just breached the outer perimeter of the estate. The bank account is empty, and now he's coming to collect the only thing he thinks has value left, you. The foyer of the mansion was a masterpiece of minimalism, but tonight it felt like a stage for a tragedy. Ho-Jin stood at the top of the marble staircase, his hands tucked into his pockets, looking down at the heavy oak doors. Nia was hidden behind the reinforced pillar, the signal jammer gripped in her hand. The doors didn't burst open. They were opened with a key, a chilling reminder that Nia's ex still thought he owned everything. He stepped into the light, followed by two men in suits who looked more like machines than humans. The ex, a man named Jae-hoon, looked around the room with a sneer. Ho-Jin, Jae-hoon called out, his voice echoing. I expected more from a man of your reputation. Hiding a thief in a glass house, it's beneath you. She's not a thief, Jae-hoon, Ho-Jin replied, his voice calm, almost bored. She's an auditor, and I must say your books are in terrible shape. In fact, they're empty. Jae-hoon's face contorted. He reached for his phone, likely trying to check his accounts or call for reinforcements. This was the moment. Now, Ho-Jin signaled. Nia pressed the button on the jammer. The lights in the foyer flickered once, and every electronic device in the room died. Jae-hoon stared at his darkened phone screen, then looked up, his eyes wide with a sudden, sharp realization. You're trapped in a vacuum, Jae-hoon, Nia said, stepping out from behind the pillar. She didn't look like the terrified woman from the sofa anymore. She stood tall, her eyes cold and predatory. No signal, no backup, and in approximately 5 minutes, the syndicate's board of directors is going to receive a file showing that you were the one who emptied the accounts into a private wallet in your name. You wouldn't, Jae-hoon hissed, reaching for the holster under his jacket. I already did, Nia said. Ho-Jin's servers are currently broadcasting that data on a delay. The only way to stop the broadcast is for us to manually override it. But since you've decided to come here with weapons... Ho-Jin descended the stairs, his presence commanding the room. He didn't pull a gun. He simply stood between Nia and the intruders. I am a cleaner, Jae-hoon. My job is to remove stains. Usually that means blood. But today the stain is you. You have 2 options. You can kill us both, and by sunrise, every hitman in the hemisphere will be looking for the man who stole $30 billion from the syndicate. Or you can walk out those doors, take your men, and disappear. I've already created a new identity for you. A quiet life in a country with no extradition. It's more mercy than you deserve, but Nia insisted on a clean exit. The tension was a physical weight. Jae-hoon looked at Nia, the woman he had tried to break, and then at Ho-jin, the man who had outplayed him without firing a single shot. The silence stretched for a full minute, the longest 60 seconds of Nia's life. Finally, Jae-hoon lowered his hand. He looked at the floor, the realization of his total defeat sinking in. He was no longer a king. He was a man with a target on his back, and the only person offering him a shield was his victim. "The codes for the new identity are in the SUV," Ho-jin said. "Leave, now." Without a word, the three men turned and walked back into the night. The heavy doors clicked shut, and the silence returned to the mansion. The sun began to rise over the Seoul skyline, casting long, golden fingers of light across the living room where it had all started. The shutters were open again, the glass reflecting a world that looked exactly the same, yet was fundamentally different for the two people inside. Nia sat on the edge of the sofa, the one she had bled on. She was holding a cup of tea, the steam rising in the cool morning air. Ho-jin was standing by the window, looking out at the city he had helped build. "Is it done?" she asked. "The broadcast was canceled," Ho-jin said, turning to look at her. "Jae-hoon is on a plane. The syndicate is in chaos, too busy fighting over the remaining crumbs to worry about a missing strategist and a retired cleaner. We are, for all intents and purposes, dead." Nia set the tea down. "So, what happens to the money, the diamonds and the hurricane?" Ho-jin walked over and sat in the chair opposite her. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't offer a romantic confession. Their bond was something deeper, forged in the fires of mutual survival and intellectual respect. "It stays in the hurricane," he said. "Neither of us can touch it without being traced. It will sit there, a digital ghost, until the end of time. Does that bother you, being a billionaire who can't spend a cent?" Nia smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "I've spent my whole life managing other people's wealth, Ho-jin. For the first time, I don't own anything. And no one owns me. That's the most expensive thing I've ever felt." "I'm leaving the mansion," Ho-jin said abruptly. "I've sold the deed through a shell company. This place is too loud now, too many memories of someone who didn't belong here." Nia felt a pang of something, not fear, but a strange sort of curiosity. "Where will you go?" "I have a boat in the Mediterranean," he said. "No smart tech, no servers, just wind and wood. It's hard to hack a sail." He paused, his gaze lingering on her. "I'm looking for a navigator, someone who knows how to read the stars when the GPS goes dark, someone who isn't afraid of the silence." Nia stood up, walking to the window to stand beside him. They didn't look at each other, they looked at the horizon. They weren't a couple in the traditional sense. They were two architects who had just finished their greatest work, their own escape. "I've always been good at finding my way," Nia said, "as long as I'm the one holding the map." "Then let's go," Ho-jin said. They walked out of the mansion together, leaving the luxury and the violence behind. As the door locked for the final time, they didn't look back. They were no longer a mafia boss and a victim. They were two ghosts, finally free to haunt the world on their own terms. The end. If you love this video, kindly hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel, and also drop your current city in the comments.